Hello all, my name is Bala and we are going to discuss about managing users and group in this session. During the installation of operating system, root is the first user which is going to be created during the installations. In Linux, basically whenever we create any users with the same name, group will create. So when the root user will create in your system, root group also will create, and this root user will be a group member of root group. To identify each user separately in your operating system, assigns a unique identifier number which is we called UID, and for the root the UID will be 0. For any Linux flavors, this UID is unique and same as 0. Similarly, when the group will create into the system, system will assign GID to the group, that is group ID, and it is also 0 for root group. In RHEL 7, RHEL 8, CentOS 7 and in CentOS 8, 0 is assigned for root user and 1 to 999. UID and GID is reserved for internal users and group. What is meant by internal users and group? That means whenever you install any services, for example web service, FTP service, some default user or group is going to be created automatically during the package installation, and system will assign UIDs and GIDs from these reserved numbers. So in Linux, when you create first user, either during installation or after the installation, for example, I have created user called MBPS. What will happen? The group will also create with the same name, that is MBPS. So system will assign UID 1000 to the MBPS user and GID 1000 to the MBPS group. Of course, MBPS user will become a group member of MBPS group, and MBPS group is a primary group for MBPS user. Let's say I have created another user called Amol. So of course with the same name Amol group will create, and this Amol user will get next available UID which is 1001, and of course for the group it will get 1001 GID. So usually operating systems will assign sequential UIDs and GIDs to the users and group. However, this will might break if you create group separately. For example, after the Amol user, if I created a group called sales, so unlike the user, when you create user with the same name, group is going to be created. If you created a group separately, of course with the same name user is not going to be created, but operating system will assign GID to this group, which is next available GID is 1002. Let's consider if after this, if you created a user called Bala operating system will create group with the same name, that is Bala, and OS will assign UID to your user, that is 1002, and for group it will assign next available GID, which is 1003. So here we can see it is not a same UID or same number, unlike a UID, right? So we can change this UID and GIDs manually. However, operating system always assign a next available UIDs and GIDs to your groups and users. Another example, let's say you created a one user called Rajesh. So of course operating system will create one group with the same name, that is Rajesh. But here if we assigned, let's say UID 5000 and GID 5000 during the users and group creation. So what will happen when you create a next user? Let's consider we have created one more user called Dinesh. So of course OS will also create Dinesh group, and Dinesh will be member of Dinesh group. Now here operating system consider your last used UIDs and GIDs. So 1003 to 5000 UIDs and GIDs is available. However, operating system will assign 5001 UID to Dinesh user and 5001 GID to the Dinesh group. So operating system usually always check last use UID and GID, and it will only assign next available UID and GID to the group. Now let's check how we can create user into the system. To create a new user, you can use user add command. For example, Bala, that is the user that I wanted to create here. So we have to provide username and the user will get created. Now once you create the user, you also need to assign password to the appropriate user, so the user can be log into the system. And for the same, you could use passwd command to assign the password to any user. Now once you enter that, it will ask you to assign the new password. Let's assign one password here. Now here I used a very simple password, and because of that it is showing a bad password, that you used a password less than 8 character. So this is recommended that you should use complex password including small and capital text, number or special character. However, in current example I just used a simple password. That's what we got a bad password. However, it is accepting the same password. So this is how we can create user and assign password to the users. As we discussed in the previous session, that operating system keeps the information into the file. When we create users or assign passwords, this information also goes into the file. Some are the important files that we need to discuss here. First of all, if you wanted to check UID and GID of user, you could use ID command and the username, and this will show you what is the UID for the particular user and what is the GID for the user. The group sections will show you which group is member for the Bala user. Now using this, we can easily identify the user UIDs and GIDs and the group membership. Now we need to understand which files are responsible to store the user and password information. So three files are very important which is responsible to store the information of user. The first file is /etc passwd. This particular file is responsible to store user information. Another file is /etc/shadow. This file is responsible to store encrypted user password and password policy. One more important file, it is /etc/group, and this particular file is responsible to store a group information. Now let's talk about the first file. If you check the first file, it is /etc passwd. This file keeps the information of all the system and a normal user or the manual user created into the file. Here it maintains the information in colon separated format. Let's take an example of the user that we created, Bala. So what is this information? So now let's take an example of Bala user. We can see the information for Bala user under the /passwd is like Bala :x 1001 1001 /home /bala /bin /bash. So let's understand this information. The first is nothing but the username. The second, where we can see X, this is nothing but just a symbolic representation that the password is stored in encrypted format. The next section is represent UID of user. Of course, the next sections represent GID of user. This is nothing but a group membership of the particular user. Now the next session we can see currently no information is available, which is blank. This is nothing but we called finger information. Now what is finger information? Finger information is nothing but personal information of user. Currently we can see it's a blank. Now if you wanted to change finger information of user, we can use chfn command, that is change finger information, and the username for which you wanted to change it, and then it will ask you the full information. For example, Bala Sahib, office, say MBPS Infotech, phone number, example, the home phone. So this informations that we added as an example for the Bala user. And if we check now once again etc passwd file, we can see those particular information is added into the passwd file in blank section. So this is nothing but a finger information or personal information of user. Now the next section is represent user's home directory. As I said, whenever you create any user into the system, it will create home folder for the particular user under the /home folder. Now we can see under the /home, a folder is created automatically during the user creation /home/bala. And the last session is nothing but a default shell for the particular user where it will execute the command. Now in Linux we have many shells available which we could use for the different purpose, and we can be modify this etc passwd file through root to assign a default shell for the users. The another shell which is available in the Linux, for example /bin/bash /bin/csh /bin/sh /bin/tcsh /bin/perl /bin/python and many more. One more shell, that is /sbin/no-login. So use a different programming languages. A default is a bash. CSH is basically used for C programming, or TCSH for CPP. The Python and Perl is available for Perl and Python. Similarly, one more share is available, that is /bin/zsh /sbin/no-login is specially available to restrict the user from the login. So if you wanted to disable any particular user, you could assign /sbin/no-login to the appropriate user. This is how the information is kept inside the /etc passwd file. Now let's understand the second file, which is /etc shadow. This is a second and very important file. This file basically keeps the information almost similar like passwd file. So this file is basically responsible to store the user password and password policies. Let's understand this particular file. I will just remove some encrypted character so it can fit to the screen. Now the first section is nothing but a username. Here second section represents encrypted password for the user. This particular file keeps the actual password, but it is in encrypted format, so no one can easily understand what is the exact password. Now after the encrypted password, the next section represent password policies. In the next session you could see the last password change date. This particular date is calculated from 1970-01-01, and this is calculated in UTC time zone format. So instead of actual date, it's only provide a number of date since 1970. So no one can easily understand what is the last password date for the password change. In the next session, we can see minimum days for password change. What is meant by this? If it is 0, that means we can change the user, or user can change the password anytime. If you provide a 1 here, that means whatever the password is assigned to user, it should keep at least for the 1 day. So this information you have to keep to the 0, so user can change its password at any point of time. Now next session is represent maximum days when the password will expire. 99,999 means nothing but the password will never expire. The next section is represents number of days before pass expire for warning. That means this sections basically represent a number of days for the warning which will appear before the password expire. So here it's a 7, that means 7 days before the password your system will start generating the warning message that your password is going to be expire in next 7 days. Now the next session basically represents number of days for inactive after password expire. So if your password got expired within a mentioned timeline, then how many days your password will be inactive? So those number by default here is nothing mentioned. That means you can reset the password any point of time, but usually you could set it's for 1 day, that will 24 hours, that means after the password expiry, or once you enter a wrong password it will inactive for those number of days. Now the last session of this represents basically password expire date if you have set up. Now both sections are blank because we didn't provided any expiry for the password or inactive period for the user account. Now let's try to change this information and see what informations we get from the shadow file. If you wanted to change the password policy of user, you can use chage command and the username. This command is used to change the password policy for user. So here we wanted to change the policy for Bala user. Now it will ask you minimum password age. By default it's a 0. If you wanted to assign 1, you need to understand if you provided 1 day, that means minimum 1 day the user will not able to change its password after the changes or after the reset. Maximum password age, for example, most of company wanted to reset the user of their password after 60 days for the security reason, and we can assign 60 days here. So every after 60 days user need to change their passwords. This is the date when the last password got changed. If you wanted, you could change it. The password expiration warning, it should start, for example, 10 days before instead of 7 days. Password inactive, by default it's a -1, so that means password can be set any point of time. If you set to 1, that means after expiry it will inactive for 1 day, and after 24 hours only the user can reset its password. Next is a password inactive period. Here by default it's a -1. That means the password can be reset any point of time after the password expire. However, if you set it to the 1, that means at least for 24 hours, that is 1 day, password cannot be reset. This policy usually we uses in ATM cards. So if you enter the wrong password, it basically lock for 24 hours, and after 24 hours only user will be able to reset the passwords. Here we can specify account expiration date. Account expiration date, usually we have to specify if the user is temporary. Some organizations invite a guest users, and for the same to use the internet or to use the network, we have to create some temporary users. In such situation, you have to specify account expiration date, so it will disable or lock after the specific date. By default is -1, that means it will never expire. Let's assign the date, for example 2019 12/31. Now if you check the password policy again from the shadow file, you could see those particular information is updated into the shadow file for Bala user. So this is how the information is kept in /etc shadow file. This informations you have to remember, as most of time it could ask in interviews as well. The next file which is responsible to store the group information is /etc group. Now if you wanted to create a group, you could use group add command to create a separate group. As you know, while creation of user, the group will create automatically with the same name. However, you could create group separately using group add command. So here let's say we create group called sales, and /etc group file maintain the information about created group. So in this particular file we can see group name, the symbol representation for encrypted password, and GID of the particular group. This is how the information is kept in etc group file. Thank you so much. Rest of we will cover in the next session.